Yep.
Okay, great. I'm Marshall Tuck. I'm the CEO for the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools, and first wanted to thank Jay. With a focus on taking the lowest performing schools in LA. Our schools are all in Watts, East LA, South Central, schools that for decades have been underperforming, and lifting those schools up. We have a contract with the school district where they've delegated authority to the Partnership for LA Schools to run these schools. Principals report to us. We are responsible for delivering results. We have a 5-year performance contract to improve the schools. If we improve them, that contract gets renewed. If we don't, then we don't run the schools. They're traditional public schools, but we have flexibility from district rules. So it's kind of, for those that are familiar with charters, it's trying to take some of the benefits of a charter school, combining that with a traditional district school, and trying to create a model that truly is scalable. Because in our country, our biggest challenge still exists in our urban schools throughout this country, schools that for a long, long time still serve the most kids and are having the biggest challenges. You're all in education. You probably understand the crisis we have in education. As a country right now, latest tests internationally, 50 industrialized countries, 19th in reading, 23rd in science, and 31st in math. That's where the U.S. landed last year on international tests. The worst we have ever performed as a country since those tests have been offered. And what's been happening is our performance is flat while other countries are getting better every single year. So if we don't make some dramatic changes, we are in real big trouble as a country. Where I live in LA, we have 46,000 students start the 9th grade. 4 years later, when those students graduate, only 7,000 out of 46,000 actually graduate prepared for college. 15% of the kids that are starting schools in LA public schools are graduating prepared for college. And this is not unique to LA. This is what's going on in cities throughout our country. So it is a massive, monumental crisis. And that's why what's great about today's conversation, we're saying, how can technology help to change that game? And we have to completely and dramatically change the game in our public schools. Otherwise, we will not compete internationally as a country. And in my opinion, more importantly, millions of kids, which is happening today as we speak right now, are not going to reach their potential in this country because they're not getting a great education. Some of the issues to improve public schools we're not going to solve today. We have major funding issues in the state of California. We have significant issues with the work rules. There's not the necessary flexibility. And we don't have enough human capital. We don't have enough smart, committed, bright people who want to be teachers in the 21st century. We've got some real challenges that are long-term policy challenges. But there's incredible promise. And there's great promise because the kids are wonderful. You go to Watts, you're going to see kids that don't have any different DNA talent than the kids in Palo Alto. If you come with me to East LA, you're going to see young people that have the same desire to learn, the same commitment to want to learn, the same desire to be pushed in school, to be felt good about, to be challenged as kids who are growing up right here. The DNA and the biology isn't different. The difference is we're not serving those kids effectively. And my perspective is thinking about the majority of high poverty neighborhoods in our country. How do we serve them more effectively? This is where our organization, after 4 years, we believe technology is and truly can be a game changer for this. We spent 2 years doing the traditional stuff in our schools. We brought in better principals. We're helping the teachers get better at what they're doing, getting parents and community more engaged. But we saw our results improving, but not fast enough. We see ourselves moving faster than the state and the district, but the gap has got to be much wider in terms of our improvement if we want to get these kids to be at grade level in what they're doing and ready to go. And that's where we think infusing technology both in the classroom in terms of what the kids are learning and how they learn, as well as technology as a huge vehicle for helping teachers get better at what they do. And that's something that we don't have to wait for politics to actually catch up to us on. We can do it right now by doing things differently. So I'm going to tell you a little about what we've done, and then we'll pause, and Jason and I will have a conversation with you all about the experiences and lessons learned. As I mentioned, 2 years of results that we're getting better, but not where they need to be. Our mission is to dramatically accelerate student achievement. It's to take the lowest performing schools and get them to the average and above over time. we said we got to shift things. Mathematics is where we started. Math, we are absolutely dying as a state. 3 of 4 kids in our schools are not at grade level in algebra. 75%. When you go to geometry, you get down to 85% not at grade level. When you go beyond that, you're talking about 90% not at grade level. So we started in math. We invested 2 years ago in a program called StMath. It's launched out of the Mind Research Institute. And we did a pilot in two schools. 2 of our elementary schools we did a pilot. Why elementary school? 1, when you start earlier, especially in mathematics, you're able to give the foundation for the future. But 2, and just as importantly, elementary school teachers were more open to change. They're just more used to collaboration than you often find in traditional big public high schools and middle schools. So we start at the elementary school level. 2 schools put StMath in place, bought computers, bought the software, raised money to do so, and saw those 2 schools increase their performance by 25% in 1 year. It was the most improvement we've seen in a long time, the most improvement you've seen from public schools, high-poverty public schools in LA in a long time. So we quickly said, hey, this is something that makes a lot of sense, and we're seeing this in schools throughout. What was happening? One is if you go to a 3rd grade classroom at Ritter Elementary, which is in the heart of Watts, where we work, you have kids that may be at kindergarten or pre-K level. You may have kids at 3rd and 4th grade level. How do we actually get to all of them in one class? That's where technology can give a very, very differentiated approach for our young people. You see some kids who just aren't feeling excited about learning. When they get an StMath, it's a little program, it's got a little penguin, Gigi's a penguin, it's got really fun gaming technology integrating with the mathematics. The kids actually enjoy it. They're feeling good about learning. They get excited to actually go in the lab or to go in their classroom when we're organized in stations. And when they're excited about learning, not surprisingly, they learn. Teachers don't have great data. Think about education. For literally, if you go to almost every class in this country, when you want to check for understanding, if I'm teaching, I'm talking to you right now. If I'm a teacher and I'm checking for understanding, I'm going to walk around. I'm going to look at the eye contact. Maybe I'll see what you're writing. And this is how I'm going to say, oh, these guys got it or not. Right? It's almost impossible to do in terms of understanding what's going on. If you are working on StMath, and I have a console table as a teacher, I can see exactly where every single one of you are, and I can see if the lesson I just gave you or the thing we just worked on, if you got that or not. Think about the efficiency difference right there. From observation, testing your body language, maybe walking around a classroom of 30 people to see what you wrote in your notebook, to seeing in real time, did you get that problem or not? Where am I going to spend the next 30 minutes as a teacher? I'm going to spend on the areas where I know because the computer is telling me most kids got stuck. I'm not going to spend time on things where they aren't stuck. So we saw big benefits on getting data to teachers. And then one benefit we saw, particularly in our schools, which may be a little bit different from private schools or even some higher net worth schools, was it helped change the belief system of the adults at the campuses. So a lot of times when you're working in high poverty schools, when you're in Watts or East LA, you have people who they've been working hard for a long time and they're not successful. And so your natural inclination is to say, well, it's the kids. It's not a good inclination. It's a bad thing. But it's insecurity, and you do that. It's the kids. The kids are the challenge. Kids are misbehaving. They won't get involved. They're out of control in the classroom. But when you actually see the young people go on to StMath, and they are smiling from ear to ear, nobody's throwing anything in the classroom. No one's off task. Kids are cranking and engaging, raising their hand when they need help. It tells people who don't say that those kids want to learn, you can't believe that anymore. And it forces you to self-reflect on your own profession as a teacher or an educator to say, hey, maybe it's actually not the kids. Maybe I got to work at how I can get better as a professional. So we saw incredible success, not just with the student data, but in terms of what we were seeing with kids and engagement and what we were seeing with teachers and using the data to improve their instruction. We said, let's scale this right away. This year went from 2 classrooms to all of our elementary schools and our 6th and 7th grade. 7,000 kids now on StMath in the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools. We had to raise significant money to do it because there's not enough computers. It's a big effort in terms of getting the teachers involved and bought in. But when you have the right software program and when you work with teachers to implement it, particularly early on, then they're going to be your best possible salespeople to tell their peers what's working well. And they are, without question, the fastest way to think about large-scale implementation of software in schools. Significant success in math. StMath goes kind of K through 7. So we said, hey, let's not just stop there. We got a lot of challenges in a lot of our schools. We have big, big challenges in reading and writing at the high school level and the middle school level. We invested in a program called Achieve 3000. rather than doing the 2-school pilot, we said, let's go large scale right now. 5,000 kids, middle of this school year, we rolled out Achieve 3000 to. And the reason it was middle of the school year versus start of the school year, California, there is no money in this state right now for public schools. So we got really, really creative on how to actually find that money, both by trying to raise the dollars and then really looking deep at the budget in order to reallocate the dollars. Lessons learned from Achieve 3000. This is a software program, and I think it's kind of the nuances in the software program that I think make the most sense for the educators. Again, the kids loved it. They did a really good job of a reward system. So kids are getting consistent rewards when they read when they're reading different articles and get to different levels. They really enjoy kind of that gaming logic built into their learning. They really like the reward system. And the teachers loved it because what this program does is it's real-time content. So for English, it's really focused on developing your reading and writing skills. It has real-time content. So everyone reads the same content, but at very different skill levels. So one of the challenges as a teacher, if you're trying to teach kids in a class, if you're a 9th grade teacher in English, and again, you're going to have a range from, in a 9th grade class, at Mendez Learning Center in East LA, Boyle Heights, where we work, you'll probably have kids that are at the 5th grade level in reading, and you'll maybe have a couple at the 10th grade level. But what Achieve allows you to do is actually allows you to take real-time content. Let's say we're talking about kind of what's going on in Syria right now, and it'll customize that content based on your level. So the kids can still have the same conversation. There's not as much of that, oh, you're the smarter kid, so you're reading better content than I'm reading. It's actually same content, very different differentiated levels that the kids are reading and engaging on. And so we saw the kids really, really like it. And again, the teachers, it filled a big need for the teachers. It tells them where the kids' reading level is at and gives them real-time actionable tools that they can use to help educate those kids and help them to read, which is what they want to do. We've seen significant success, and like most things, I think, in technology, you want to get as much of the, like, not top-down, but kind of network effect. We expect this to be rolled out in English. English teachers were talking happily about it. It's already been moved into social science, and a lot of our special ed teachers are starting to use it because they're hearing again from their peers. So I think as we're all doing this work in education, the peer-to-peer, if you get teachers committed to it with a strong principal who's also supporting that, things will roll out at a much, much faster pace than if you try to force it through kind of administrators, folks like me in the suit and otherwise. So we've seen that success. We tried to launch also, and we're launching math for algebra and geometry. It's a little harder. The more complex the subject, the little harder it gets because you're requiring more adult behavioral change. Challenge in schools is about capacity. You got a sector that's been pretty isolated, that has not been infused with technology for a long, long time. So things that kind of feel pretty natural to you and I, oh, that would be obvious, aren't as obvious. And so when you think about implementation, it's always got to be the extra step. We moved very quickly with the algebra and geometry, had to take a little bit of a step back because we realized that the complexity of the math combined with the newness of the software and the amount of adult behavioral change it required amongst the teachers, that we had to be smart about scaffolding that up. The good news is our partner in math, which is a group called Revolution Prep, they are providing a lot of service on the ground to the teachers. And I think that's the other thing is you're thinking about software solutions, different for the private sector market in terms of private schools, and we can talk about that in the Q&A because I think it's a different customer. But in traditional public schools where you haven't seen a lot of technology infused, you have to provide a lot of support. The support in the early years or early months of implementation is just as important as the software because you've got to get the teachers to get comfortable with it. Once they are comfortable, they will carry the water for you. But if you're just rolling out a product without actually that support, it'll have a real hard time actually getting real traction. Last area to talk about before I pause is the possibility, what we've invested is around teacher collaboration and teacher improvement. So if you think about education, it's historically been one of the most isolated sectors there is, even though it should be the most collaborative. Right? The hardest thing to do as a teacher is figure out how do you actually teach 30 kids to get excited, inspired, to feel confident, to love math, to fall in love with world history. That's not something that one person can do really well. You want to collaborate as much as possible. Historically, educators are in a classroom isolated on their own entirely. Technology has the ability to completely blow that up and change it. When we started in the partnership schools, we said, hey, let's get teachers leaving their classrooms and visiting each other during the school day. There's a lot of benefit there, but the downside is they got to teach their class during the school day. So, and a lot of teachers are like, hey, I don't want to leave my kids, or you got to spend money to get a sub, and there's no money to pay for subs for them to go visit other classrooms. So how do you create virtual communities so that teachers can collaborate with each other after school at different times, and it doesn't require me to just go visit a classroom? And also, how can you create virtual communities where maybe my teacher doesn't have the best math teacher in town, my school doesn't have the best math teacher in town, but a school 5 miles away, 10 miles away, or 40 miles away actually does. So now I can connect that incredible math teacher with all the math teachers in my network, online, virtually, and collaboratively. So we just launched leveraging a product called Better Lessons, which is really about sharing lesson plans and also videos across teachers. And it's open to everybody, but you can create more customized networks. So we, with the partnership, have a Partnership Connect network where we're trying to get our teachers to be putting lesson plans, but more importantly, sharing videos of each other and then actually giving kind of good content around those videos. So you're seeing a lot more collaboration amongst teachers. It takes a step because something like, hey, let's videotape ourselves, it's just not normal in the sector. So getting teachers to kind of step forward and be comfortable doing that is a big step forward. And you always got to think about the implementation of these things. But our early teachers are very excited and positive about the potential of Partnership Connect. And we think that these kind of collaborative tools, as long as they make sense for teachers and you understand the mindset and what the teacher has on their plate, and also understand the mindset of the administrators who have to support them, that we think there's huge potential to significantly improve the current capacity of teachers. Teachers have been getting a lot of bad raps in the media lately. There's a lot of committed people in our schools. We've got to give them better tools to be more successful rather than kind of pound them all the time and say they're not doing well. There's a lot of good people who need better tools. And that's where I think a lot of the products that all of you are developing and that we're all trying to work on can be really, really exciting and fundamental. So those are some of the areas that we're very early in this work. As I mentioned, we didn't go heavy on technology our first 2 years. We saw good momentum with our early success, have pushed hard the last year and a half on implementing technology in math, in English, and around teacher collaboration. We've seen some really early good signs in terms of our student achievement, in terms of the feedback we're getting from teachers, and you can see it by how fast these things are rolling out in terms of teachers telling each other to get involved in what they're doing. We got a heck of a long way to go, and there's a lot of challenges, I think, related to implementing technology, regardless of the product in the schools, which I think I can be helpful with as we have a conversation around this. And just wanted to close that we need as much help in this sector as possible. So I know a lot of folks, when you're working, it's obviously around starting a business to raise some money and be successful in what you're doing. What's nice about doing this in education is you're actually not only going to hopefully be successful for yourselves, but literally working on the most important problem that we have in our country and working on a problem that we have an incredible potential to dramatically improve what's going on in classrooms throughout our cities and our country. If we can get enough people behind it, enough good products involved, and I'm telling you from our perspective, and think of us as we're a mid-sized urban school district in the heart of LA, taking on the toughest schools, we are seeing really promising results that can have a lot of impact on a lot of kids' lives. So looking forward to the conversation, and with that, we'll turn it back over to Jason.
Yeah. So Carlos, can you get 2 glasses of water? Can you get some water? Awesome. That's great. Wow, it's incredibly inspiring, and it's great that there are folks like you getting in there. Why did you choose to do this? I mean, you worked at an enterprise software company, you worked as an investment banker, and then you took on this challenge. What was your thinking? Why did you personally decide to put yourself into this incredibly challenging situation?
So I was raised kind of raised in a household where helping other people was emphasized. But my original plan was I'm going to go make a ton of money, and then much later in life, I'm going to go help people with that money. That was the original plan. Went into investment banking because that was the fastest path to make a bunch of money. Then decided that wasn't making sense to me. I went and did some volunteer work in Zimbabwe and met some incredible kids that I knew they were never going to reach their potential because they lived in a dictator government with no education system, no healthcare system. So right then I said, for me, the rest of my life is going to be about helping people have a better life. In our country, there is no question that it's the education system. If we improve it, will impact the most Americans of any social issue that we currently have. It's an infinitely solvable problem because the kids are just really talented, but we got to completely shift the way we think about serving them. So that was, for me, it was kind of values started with an inspirational journey in Zimbabwe and then a desire to get busy on what I cared about most.
Yeah, it's awesome. Let's talk about teachers. That was something that you touched on a lot. Teachers have been getting beat up in a major way in the press. The teachers are the problem. The teachers are the problem. They're unwilling to adopt the new technology. There's no new teachers who are tech savvy. When we do get new teachers in who are tech savvy, they're the first to get laid off because seniority is what seems to drive at least the public school system. Does that match your experience, or is your experience they actually really want to do good? What's the truth there? Are there bad teachers who won't adopt technology and won't advance and who have given up?
There isn't a sector in the country where there's not bad employees.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I mean, every sector has some employees that don't make sense for that sector. Teachers have been getting a really bad rap in this state, in this country. There's such a pounding on teachers the problem. If you just solve the union problem, if you just fire all the teachers, then everything will be solved. When they're out, that's just not the case. I mean, the vast majority of the teachers that I work with are committed to what they're doing. They're getting up early. They're driving a long way. They're going to jobs that are brutal. For the last 4 years, most of them are getting pink slips every March saying you may get fired, and they stick with it. And they actually are committed to getting better at what they're doing. Now, they are, as you can imagine, a little bit at this point kind of distrustful of here's the guy in the suit with the new idea for this year and for next year and the following year. So there's a natural sense of defensiveness. But once you get through that, and if you give people tools that help them do their job and you respect where they're coming from, you see people run with it. And we do have challenges. I mean, you can't just wish yourself to get better using technology if you haven't used it for a long time, or if you haven't been involved in an environment where you're changing your practices often. It's going to take a little bit longer, but it doesn't change the fact that people want to do it. And I actually think the people getting the biggest pass in the sector have been principals and administration, because if you think about like your companies, no one ever says, oh, the engineers are all a disaster. They're just terrible. If you would just fired all the engineers, and you'd say, hey, who are the entrepreneurs running these companies? Are they building the right environments? Are they giving the engineers the right tools, or the marketing people the right tools? And education, and we always pound in the teachers. So yeah, I think it's definitely way too skewed the wrong way. There are rules that don't make sense that need to get changed. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
Tenure, using student achievement to kind of think about teaching and performance. Those are no-brainers, but that isn't the only problem going on in education.
So let's talk about implementing technology. A lot of entrepreneurs in the room, and we'll see them on stage. You've put in a bunch of math and reading software, implemented for thousands of people, hundreds, and then in some cases thousands. What's the best way for a technology company to approach a school, especially a public school? And then you did mention there's a difference between a private school and a public school, so there's two questions there. Number one, what's the difference for me as an entrepreneur approaching each one? And what's the best practice for approaching the one that you're most familiar with, public schools?
So I think I'll start with the difference first. The challenge that I have in my job, because I'm working in public schools and also public schools in the toughest areas, the private schools just have a lot more money. So the natural place for entrepreneurial organizations is to say, hey, there's more money there. There's probably a little more embracing of technology. Let's focus our efforts there. Hey, if we're going to have a tutoring program, it's more likely wealthier parents that are looking to get tutoring programs for their kids. So on the one hand, it's an easier market for a point of entry. The flip side is the public school market is just a much bigger market. There's a lot more dollars, even though the individual dollars are higher at a school level in terms of, there's a $400 billion spent annually in this country on public education. So it's a bigger market. It's just a tougher market to actually sell into and get into. And I think that when you think about working with public schools, I definitely advise you want to find a school system that's either very entrepreneurial or find a school system that works with partners like us that are entrepreneurial as your first point of entry. So one of the reasons that our partners like working with us is that we deal with traditional public schools, so we're at a big scale. We understand our teachers are representative of teachers throughout the country in public schools, but our organization really wants to embrace doing things differently, so they find us to be a good partner that's going to help support not just our teachers, but also people coming in to work with our schools, bring software solutions. If you're just trying to sell into a large traditional school system, it is extremely difficult because they're not used to making decisions on new products. There's a very heavy risk-averse culture, very conservative culture in big school systems. But you're seeing,
because people might get fired if they make the wrong decision.
If you think about, these are the last great monopolies. And so for the last 30 years, it's all top. It's completely top down. It's all about, I didn't make that decision, so I don't get in trouble. And people haven't gotten fired for bad decisions. They're not used to investing in, change requires losing some money. You got to invest in learning. Risk is required to drive change. And so, but there's a lot more public school systems that either are run by groups like ours or that are getting there. They're now more open to taking risk. And I think that's a great place for entrepreneurs to try to play. And I would advise you, even if you're selling into the private school market, you still want to play in the public school market because the behavior of the principals, of the teachers is different. And so the skills around adapting technology are going to be a little bit different. And as an organization, you can't do it all at once, but you want to learn both those things so frankly you can have the greatest impact on the market and the greatest impact for your revenue.
One of the big trends in our industry, enterprise software or consumer software, is the concept of freemium. Try before you buy, or use it to a point, and then if you want to use it anymore, we'll charge you, or we'll simply upsell you on this feature set, but you get the overwhelming majority for free. Do you think that's a great strategy for going into public schools, offering this product for free up to 1,000 students and then turning it on, or turning it on for the administrator tools? And has anybody approached you with the freemium model yet?
So I think in California public schools, some creative model to get started and show you can do it is essential. We have such little money in the state right now. We've cut funding by 20% in the last 4 years in the state of California. We were 43rd out of 50 states 4 years ago. We're now 47th. If the initiative in November does not pass, we will be 50th in the country in terms of per pupil funding. We spend about $7,000 a kid in California, fully loaded. A place like New Jersey spending $15,000 a kid. There's just not a ton of room. So that doesn't mean that there's not money to be made or value to be added to kids. What it means is you get really creative about the first sale and the proof point. And your first couple projects have got to be successful. So for us, like the big light bulb for us was our pilot with StMath was really successful. Our teachers liked it, they embraced it, our kids loved it, and their results improved. And that then gave us kind of the confidence to do more with it. We obviously also go and raise private money. The good news is there are private funders in philanthropic dollars that will also now help jumpstart some of the technology solutions. So our creation with Better Lessons was they have a free product, but they have some really good value-added services for a network, kind of good analytics on what they're doing. You can really customize things for the partnership network. You can brand it. So we kind of saw what they had broadly that was for free. We like what they had. We raised a little bit of money to then fund a pilot for what they're doing, and our teachers like it, so we're going to keep paying for it. And one other thing to be thinking about in California, where there is an opportunity, there's a bunch of money right now spent on textbooks. That's going away in the next 5, hopefully 5, maybe 7 years. We're slower than we should be in this sector. But it's going to free up a bunch of money for software. So that's what we've been telling our, like when I pitch funders, when I'm trying to raise money, we have a $6.5 million campaign right now. We've raised $3 million. We're trying to raise $3.5 million more. My raising isn't from VC. I mean, it's from VC guys, but they're philanthropic dollars, not their investing dollars from the VC. But it's hey, get us $6.5 million. We can scale blended learning through 2015, and then we believe there's going to be enough freed up dollars from the textbook transition where we can use that money to pay for software. So there are some trends going on that's going to free up some dollars, even a constrained budget, that's going to put people in position to buy the right kind of software if they believe the software works well.
What's the impact of OpenCourseWare, free open source courseware, as opposed to buying, $100 textbooks that haven't changed, and people feel like we're kind of ripping off schools and that these sweetheart deals for textbooks are just ridiculous, and all this OpenCourseWare is now being put out, whether it's Khan Academy, take 2 drinks, or other services now. All this OpenCourseWare out there, is it going to make its way into the public school system, or are the lobbyists and the evil people trying to sell these textbooks at outrageous prices going to win?
The lobbyists will not win. They're effective, so they make it much slower than it should be, but they won't win. And I can say that because I can walk. The fun part of my job is I walk classrooms, East LA, Watts, South Central, and I see teachers using the open source, the open tech curriculum right in front of my face. So you'll in different kinds, like really cool stuff. You'll go in, you'll see 2 drinks, Khan Academy here or there, but you'll also. Like I went in and some teacher had really cool math games. I said, what'd you do? She's like, I just went to Google. I Googled math, 7th grade, CST. CST is a California standardized test, the content standardized test for the state, preparation. And she had like 6 free games come up, and she liked 2 of them. So you see it on the ground. It's going to happen.
And it will be ground up, clearly.
It's definitely ground up. And there's some push top-down, but the lobbies are very powerful in California, but it's turning. And the other piece is the software's got to get there a little bit further. So I actually was having a conversation with Saul Khan, and I said, hey, am I crazy for paying for software right now? And the answer was, their stuff, it's really strong, but there's still vast majority of their market is people on their own kind of learning their own kind of tutoring and pieces of subjects versus in the state of California, we have standards we have to teach kids for 7th grade. So the software's got to also make sense with the standards. You can't force the teachers to be the ones to decipher standards, your software, and make it all make sense for the kids. But I think the free software is catching up, and that's definitely where it's going.
Maybe we take a couple questions from the audience, and if you could identify if you're a founder or a teacher or an administrator or a venture capitalist. Anybody have any questions for Marshall? I see one right here or there.
Hey there, I'm a combination of a teacher and a founder. I teach at a school where we certainly have a very wonderful and supportive administration, but both from a funding and from an institutional capacity perspective, we're not going to be able to get much technology specifically to the school and support it. For a founder who's trying to focus on selling to teachers, where's that intersection of profitability and at the same time delivering value in the classroom, delivering increased achievement in the classroom? Because it seems like in my school, a solution where the school is to purchase something isn't going to work as well as the teachers being able to make decisions about something specifically they can buy for their classroom.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the balance of kind of I think I get the question, balance of like profitability and how can you make money versus the challenges of there not being money and teachers being constrained. Is that kind of the crux of the question? This is why I think we have to creative models around thinking of both private and public schools, and you can't necessarily differentiate your cost structure, but you can get creative. Like our partner Revolution Prep, they charge us a very different price than they charge either individual families that use their product at retail, because a lot of folks will actually sell a retail product to families, and then they'll also sell an institutional product to high-poverty schools like ours. So that's one way to think about the difference on the model. I think you do need to make sure, though, that you're working with schools, to your point, where the teachers and principals are empowered. You do not, like big bureaucracies where they're making the centralized decisions, they're losers. Like you may get that first sale because you have a friend who knows a friend who can make the purchasing decision, but you're toast after that because there won't be any sort of implementation. You got to find places where they believe at the core of the school system that teachers and principals should be making key decisions, and then at least that point, you're going to be sure that with the limited money they have, the teachers and principals will buy the solutions that they think can solve their problem and their kids' problems as fast as possible. But I think from a business model perspective, in California, you got to get creative or also move beyond California, but include California as another way to think about private-public or cross-state with some California sales.
Another question. Go ahead.
I'm Tyler, and I'm neither founder nor a teacher, just manager. But aside from the specific system that you mentioned as far as your teachers collaborating using that online system, I guess in a scenario where they don't have that, you did mention how if a teacher adopts a piece of technology, they kind of spread that. What, I guess from your experience, have you used to kind of facilitate that spreading of teacher to teacher? I mean, do they call each other up after work? Do they all hang out at conferences? What?
How do you make it viral?
Yeah.
For a teacher?
So we got a long way to go as a sector, and just to clarify, we've seen momentum on teacher to teacher, but there's some schools where the cultures are trickier, but it's definitely the best way to go. We're trying to invest now in actually giving creating a master teacher kind of, or a pioneer teacher, where we find 3 to 5 highly influential teachers at each school site and have that kind of be an anchor point for connecting to other teachers and giving them a little bit of a stipend so that we're not relying just solely on, hey, people to use their own time and energy to go and spread it. So we're actually kind of funding or trying to fund our core teachers, the teachers who are really good at what they do, who are respected by their peers, and who are interested in actually both engaging in new ways to teach for themselves as well as sharing with their peers. And we think that should be elevated and made exciting. And what you can do with that also is right now in this sector, if you want to improve, you got to go be a principal. Whereas how can we create better jobs for teachers who want to be teachers but can also be really effective at working with their peers? So we think that's the best model for sharing is supporting teachers to be the ones and frankly paying them to do so.
Let's take a final question right here in the red shirt.
Broderick Turner. I was a high school math teacher until 2 weeks ago, and I start the Analyst Fellowship of Education Pioneers in a month. My question is this. What product or services do you wish you had now that you have not seen yet?
That's a great question. Thank you for that.
That's a question that requires 5 seconds of thought. It is a great question.
Yeah, I mean, is it behavior? Is it teacher education and development? I mean, I keep hearing pitches on student behavior. While you're thinking, do you buy into that? Like teachers pressing a button every time a child misbehaves or does something good? Is that? No, I've heard this pitch of, you know.
I mean, I would say the biggest gap, I mean, there's a lot of things out there, but the special education population and products that better serve special education, and that ranges, just so folks who don't completely know, that can range from a special needs student that has real kind of physical handicaps or mental handicaps, as well as kind of emotionally disturbed student who has kind of serious psychological or emotional issues. There's not, it's even though we spend a lot of money as a country, we do not know what works really well for those young people. And I think that this is a place where technology can have some really exciting impacts, but it's early, it's a tough market. And so when we sit back as an organization, we have tons of challenges, but one where we're really far on is how do we best serve. It's such a diverse, like kids are diverse as it is. Within special needs, it's so diverse in terms of what is the best way to support young people who have real, unique, either physical, mental or emotional needs. And so I think, to me, I don't know what that product would look like, so it's not the best product-based answer. But
I guess for people with Asperger's or attention deficit disorder and dyslexia, they've made some iPad apps that seem to allow them to communicate or lower anxiety that have been pretty effective.
I've seen some good stuff around like speech therapy. So those products that now that they're tighter markets and it's trickier. But I think but on the side note, there's huge private, like there's a lot of, as you see more and more needs being diagnosed, there are a lot of wealthy families who want to get more support for their kids. So it's something you could see kind of starting a product, selling it to wealthier individuals, and then working it way back to the public school system.
Awesome. Well, this has been an amazing discussion. Let's hear it from Marshall Tuck.
Thank you.
And